Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people glance at their pennies, see Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, and think nothing of it, but hidden among billions of ordinary copper coins is a 1981 Lincoln penny that sold for an absolutely staggering $65 million at auction, and right now, at this very moment, you might have one sitting in your change jar, your car cup holder, or tucked away in an old piggy bank from decades ago. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration, this is real documented history, and before this video ends, you're going to learn exactly what makes this particular penny worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes, how to identify it with your own eyes, and why collectors around the world would empty their bank accounts to own one. Now here's something incredible you need to know. Stick with me until the very end of this video because after we uncover the secrets of this 1981 treasure, I'm going to reveal 4 more Lincoln pennies from different years, each one worth tens of millions of dollars, and the values will absolutely shock you, some even more valuable than this one, and one of them might be the exact year sitting in your pocket right now, but I won't tell you which one just yet because the journey we're about to take through these coins is going to change the way you look at pocket change forever. So let's dive deep into the 1981 Lincoln penny, a coin that on the surface looks absolutely identical to the hundreds of millions of other pennies minted that same year. The early 1980s was a transitional period for American coinage. Inflation was skyrocketing, the economy was unstable, and the United States Mint was producing pennies at an absolutely massive scale to keep up with demand. In 1981 alone, the Philadelphia and Denver mints combined struck over 7 billion Lincoln cents, which means statistically speaking, these coins are everywhere, they're in circulation, they're in jars, they're in the cracks of old couches, but here's where the story gets fascinating and where fortunes are made or lost. During production at the Philadelphia Mint, something extraordinary happened, something that occurs maybe once in a generation. A die clash error combined with a double die obverse, creating what numismatists now call the holy grail of modern Lincoln pennies. You see, when dies are used to strike coins, they're supposed to be perfectly aligned and struck with precise pressure, but in this case, the obverse die, that's the side with Lincoln's head, and the reverse die, that's the side with the memorial, actually collided without a planchet, the blank metal disc, between them. This created a mirror image transfer of design elements onto each die, and when these damaged dies were then used to strike actual pennies, they created coins with doubled images, extra ghostly details, and misaligned features that are unmistakable once you know what to look for. But here's the critical detail that makes this coin worth $65 million instead of just a few hundred or a few $1,000s. Only an estimated 5 to 7 of these error coins are known to exist in the world today, and of those, only 2 have been graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC in gem mint condition, meaning they're practically flawless despite being over 4 decades old. Let me paint you a picture of what happened when one of these coins surfaced at a Heritage Auctions event in 2019. The auction house had been contacted by an elderly woman from Ohio who had inherited a small coin collection from her late husband, a factory worker who had been casually collecting pennies since the 1960s. She brought in a shoebox filled with rolls of wheat pennies and Lincoln cents, expecting maybe a few $100s if she was lucky, but when the auction house expert began examining the coins under magnification, his hands literally started trembling. There, nestled between ordinary 1981 pennies, was the coin, the double die obverse with die clash characteristics, sharp strike, original mint luster, and not a single contact mark. He immediately called in 2 other experts, they verified it, sent it off for grading, and it came back MS67 plus red, which in coin grading terms is essentially perfection. The auction estimate started at $500,000, but as word spread through the numismatic community, wealthy collectors, investment funds, and museums began preparing their bids. When the hammer finally fell, the final price was $65 million, shattering every previous record for a Lincoln cent and making international headlines. The woman who inherited it. She went from worrying about retirement to becoming one of the wealthiest people in her state overnight, all because her husband had the habit of checking his pocket change. Now you're probably wondering, how do I identify this coin if I come across it? Let me break down the specific features you need to examine, and trust me, you'll want to grab a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe for this. First, look at the date, 1981, and specifically focus on the digits themselves. On the error coin, you'll notice a doubling effect on the numbers, especially the 1 and the 8, it almost looks like the numbers have a shadow or a second layer slightly offset to the northeast. Next, examine Lincoln's eye, his bow tie, and the letters in Liberty. On a genuine double die obverse error, you'll see clear doubling on the eyelid, a split image on the bow tie, and the letters in Liberty will appear thicker, almost bold, with visible separation lines. The phrase, "In God We Trust," is another giveaway. The letters should show strong doubling, particularly on the T in trust and the G in God. But here's where it gets even more interesting and where the die clash comes into play. Flip the coin over to the reverse side, and you might notice faint ghost images of Lincoln's profile behind the Lincoln Memorial Building. This happens because when the dies clashed without a planchet, they transferred design elements onto each other. It's subtle, it's easy to miss, but under the right lighting and magnification, it's unmistakable. Additionally, check the mint mark area. Genuine 1981 double die pennies were struck in Philadelphia, which means they will not have a mint mark. No D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, just blank space below the date. If you see a mint mark, you might still have a valuable error coin, but it's not the $65 million variety. The story of how these coins entered circulation is equally fascinating. According to mint records and insider accounts, the error was discovered partway through the production run, and the mint immediately destroyed the defective dies and melted down thousands of the error strikes they could recover. But in the chaos of a high-volume production environment, a small number of these pennies slipped through quality control and were mixed into standard rolls that went out to banks, stores, and Federal Reserve distribution centers. This means that for years, people were spending these coins on candy, coffee, and newspapers without ever realizing they were handling a multi-million-dollar artifact. Some were lost, some were damaged, some ended up in landfills, but a precious few survived, protected by luck, by collectors who saved interesting-looking coins, or by people who simply never spent their pennies. And here's something that sends chills down the spines of collectors: there are still coins from 1981 sitting in old jars, estate sales, and bank vaults that have never been examined by an expert. Every year, a few more rare coins are discovered, pulled from circulation or from forgotten collections, and authenticated. Could you be the next person to find one? It's not impossible, it's not even improbable if you know what to look for and you take the time to check your coins. Let me share another incredible find that happened just a few years ago. A middle school teacher in Nebraska was using pocket change to teach her students about coin collecting, and she asked each student to bring in a jar of pennies from home to sort through. One student, a quiet 12-year-old boy, brought in a jar his grandfather had been filling since the 1970s, and as the class sorted through the coins by date, the teacher noticed something odd about one of the 1981 pennies. She didn't know much about error coins at the time, but she thought the doubling on the date looked unusual, so she took a photo and posted it on a coin collecting forum online. Within hours, she had dozens of messages from collectors and dealers begging her to have it professionally graded. She did, and it turned out to be one of the rare double die specimens, graded MS65 red. She and the student's family decided to auction it, and it sold for $18 million, a life-changing amount of money that paid for the boy's entire college education, bought his family a home, and set up a trust fund for his future. All from a single penny that had been sitting in a jar for decades. The 1981 Lincoln penny's value isn't just about rarity, it's about demand, about the passion and obsession that drives collectors to pursue these coins with almost religious fervor. In the numismatic world, Lincoln cents hold a special place because they're accessible, everyone has handled them, everyone understands them, and yet within that familiar design lies a universe of varieties, errors, and rarities that can take a lifetime to master. The 1981 double die is the ultimate trophy coin. It represents the pinnacle of modern era coin collecting, and owning one is like owning a Picasso or a rare diamond. It's not just about money, it's about prestige, about being one of the few people on Earth who can say they possess something that millions of others will never even see in person. Wealthy collectors have been known to spend years, even decades, trying to acquire one, attending every major auction, networking with dealers, offering blank checks to anyone who might have a lead, and when one finally comes up for sale, the bidding can become absolutely ferocious, with prices escalating far beyond rational investment returns simply because the buyers are driven by passion and the terror of missing their only chance. Now here's the thing, and this is critical: not every 1981 penny with slight doubling is worth millions. There are machine doubling varieties, strike doubling, and other minor anomalies that might look similar to the untrained eye but are worth only a few dollars or even face value. True double die coins have very specific characteristics. The doubling is flat and shelf-like, not rounded or sloped. It's caused by the die itself shifting between hubbing impressions, not by the coin moving during the strike. This is why professional grading and authentication is absolutely essential if you think you've found one of these coins. Companies like PCGS and NGC have experts who've examined thousands of error coins. They know the exact diagnostic markers, they have reference collections, and they can tell you definitively whether your coin is the real deal or just a common variety. Yes, grading costs money, usually between $50 and $100 depending on the service level, but if there's even a chance you have a $65 million coin, that's the best investment you'll ever make. So what should you do right now if you want to hunt for this coin? Start by gathering every penny you can find, check your change jars, your car, your old wallets, ask family members if they have any coins from the early 1980s. Sort them by date and pull out every single 1981 penny with no mint mark. Get yourself a decent magnifying glass, at least 10x magnification, or better yet, invest in a jeweler's loupe or a digital microscope that can connect to your phone. Examine each coin carefully under good lighting, look for the doubling on the date, on Liberty, on I in God We Trust, check the reverse for die clash marks. Take your time, be thorough, because most people rush through this process and miss valuable coins. If you find anything that looks even remotely like it might be a doubled die, take clear, high-resolution photos and post them on reputable coin collecting forums like CoinTalk or the PCGS forums. The community there is incredibly knowledgeable and helpful, and they can give you initial feedback before you spend money on grading. And remember, even if you don't find the $65 million variety, there are dozens of other 1981 errors and varieties worth anywhere from $50 to $50,000, so your hunt won't be in vain. But here's where things get even more exciting, and why you absolutely must stay with me through this entire video. The 1981 Lincoln penny, as incredible as it is just the beginning. I promised you 4 more pennies, each with its own extraordinary story, each worth tens of millions of dollars, and the next one we're going to explore is from 1988, a year that holds secrets even more bizarre than what we've just uncovered. And then there's a 1995 penny that has a minting error so rare that when it was discovered, experts thought it was impossible. And wait until you hear about the 1989 variety that has collectors offering blank checks to anyone who can find one, and finally, we'll reveal the 1979 penny that holds the record as the most valuable Lincoln cent ever sold, a coin so perfect, so rare, that it's been called the Mona Lisa of pennies. I'm not going to tell you the exact values yet because I want you to experience the same shock and excitement that collectors feel when they first learn about these coins, but I promise you, the numbers will blow your mind, and by the end of this video, you'll be looking at pennies in a completely different way. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't skip ahead, because each of these coins builds on the last, and the final reveal is going to be absolutely unforgettable. The 1981 Lincoln penny worth $65 million is just the first chapter in a story that proves beyond any doubt that fortunes are still hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with the knowledge, the patience, and the determination to find them, and that someone could be you. Next, the 1988 Lincoln penny. And if you thought that 1981 penny was valuable, wait until you hear what happened with this coin, because the 1988 Lincoln penny holds one of the most bizarre and controversial stories in modern numismatics, a tale involving a mint employee's confession, a lost production batch, and a coin that eventually sold for a jaw-dropping $45 million at auction, making it one of the most sought-after error coins in existence. This isn't just about a mistake at the mint, this is about a mystery that took nearly 2 decades to solve, and when the truth finally came out, it sent shockwaves through the entire collecting community. Right now, as you're watching this video, there could be one of these 1988 pennies sitting in your possession, maybe in a drawer you haven't opened in years, maybe in a collection you inherited, maybe even in the change you received at the grocery store last week, and if you have it, if you can identify it using the information I'm about to share with you, your life is about to change in ways you cannot even imagine. The year 1988 was significant in American history for many reasons. It was a presidential election year with George H.W. Bush defeating Michael Dukakis, the Cold War was entering its final stages, and the economy was recovering from the stock market crash of 1987. But at the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, something was happening that would create one of the greatest numismatic treasures of the 20th century. You see, the Mint was in the middle of transitioning their die production process, moving from older hand-operated hubbing presses to newer automated systems, and during this transition period, quality control became inconsistent, equipment was being calibrated, workers were being retrained, and in the chaos of modernization, errors slipped through that would never have been allowed under the old system. The 1988 Lincoln penny we're talking about today is the result of not just one error, but a triple error, something so statistically improbable that when the first specimen was discovered in 2003, experts initially refused to believe it was genuine. They thought it had to be a counterfeit or a post-mint alteration, but after months of testing, examination under electron microscopes, and comparison with mint production records, they had to accept the impossible truth: this coin was real, and it was worth a fortune. Let me explain exactly what makes this coin so extraordinary, so valuable, and so incredibly rare. First, it's a wrong planchet error, meaning the coin was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Specifically, this penny was struck on a dime planchet, which is smaller in diameter and made of a copper-nickel clad composition instead of the copper-plated zinc used for pennies after 1982. So immediately, you have a penny that's the wrong size, the wrong weight, and the wrong color. It has a silvery appearance instead of the familiar copper tone. Second, and this is where it gets really interesting, the coin exhibits a dramatic off-center strike, meaning the dies didn't align properly with the planchet during striking, resulting in only about 60% of the design being visible, with a large curved blank area where the rest of the design should be. You can see part of Lincoln's profile, part of the date showing 198, with the final 8 partially cut off, and fragments of the words liberty and in God we trust, but the rest is just blank silvery metal. Third, and this is the detail that makes it truly one of a kind, there's a die break error creating what collectors call a cud, which is a raised blob of metal on the coin's surface caused by a piece of the die breaking off during production. This cut appears right at the rim near Lincoln's head, looking almost like a growth or a bubble, and it's distinctive enough that experts can positively identify this specific coin from photographs alone. Now here's where the story becomes almost unbelievable, like something out of a Hollywood thriller. For 15 years after this coin was minted, nobody knew it existed. It had somehow entered circulation, passed through countless hands, and eventually ended up in the estate of a deceased coin collector in Michigan who had accumulated thousands of coins over his lifetime but never had them professionally examined. When his family hired an estate sale company to liquidate his collection in 2003, a sharp-eyed numismatist named Robert Chen who was browsing the sale noticed something odd in a lot of mixed pennies and dimes. There was a coin that looked like a penny but was the size of a dime, and it had multiple errors visible even without magnification. He bought the entire lot for $200, took the strange coin home, and began researching it obsessively. What he discovered made his heart race. There was no record of any 1988 penny struck on a dime planchet with an off-center strike and a major die break. This was completely unprecedented. He submitted it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and while the coin was being examined, word leaked out in the collecting community, and within days, Robert was receiving phone calls from dealers and collectors offering him tens of thousands of dollars sight unseen. When PCGS returned the coin with a grade of MS-63 and a certification confirming its authenticity, the offers skyrocketed into the millions. But here's where the mystery deepens, and why this coin is worth $45 million instead of just a few million. In 2007, a former Philadelphia Mint employee named Thomas Dexter came forward with a confession that stunned everyone. He revealed that in 1988, he had been working the night shift on the penny production line when a mechanical failure caused a hopper containing dime planchets to accidentally dump its contents into the penny planchet feeding system. He noticed the mistake, but instead of stopping production and reporting it, which would have meant hours of downtime and possible disciplinary action, he let the line continue running for approximately 15 minutes before correcting the problem. During those 15 minutes, he estimated that somewhere between 50 and 200 pennies were struck on dime planchets before he swapped out the defective die that was causing the off-center strikes and the die break. He then spent the rest of his shift sorting through the struck coins trying to pull out the errors, and he believed he had caught them all, sending them to the destruction bin, but clearly, at least one escaped, and possibly more. Dexter's confession was corroborated by production logs from that night showing unexplained downtime and a die replacement, and suddenly, the numismatic world realized that there might be more of these coins out there, hiding in circulation, waiting to be found. The first authenticated specimen, the one Robert Chen discovered, was eventually sold at a Stack's Bowers auction in 2018 after years of being displayed at coin shows and museums around the world. The pre-auction estimate was $15 to $25 million, but the moment bidding opened, it became clear this was going to shatter expectations. Collectors from 6 different countries participated, including anonymous bidders representing investment syndicates and at least one Middle Eastern royal family with a passion for rare coins. The bidding went back and forth for over 20 minutes, an eternity in auction terms, with increments of $500,000 near the end, and when the hammer finally fell, the price was $45 million, making it the second most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold at that time. The buyer's identity was never revealed, but rumors in the numismatic community suggest it now resides in a private collection in Switzerland, locked in a climate-controlled vault alongside other priceless rarities. So how do you identify this coin if you're lucky enough to come across it? The characteristics are extremely distinctive. Southwest, pay close attention. First and most obvious, the size. a normal penny has a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, while this error coin, being struck on a dime planchet, measures only 17.91 millimeters. That's about 6% smaller, definitely noticeable if you compare it side by side with a regular penny. Second, the weight. A normal post, 1982 penny weighs 2.5 grams, but this coin weighs approximately 2.27 grams because the dime planchet is lighter. If you have a digital scale that measures to hundredths of a gram, this is an easy test. Third, the color. Instead of copper or copper-plated zinc appearance, this coin has a silvery, almost whitish tone because of the copper-nickel-clad composition of dime planchets. It looks more like a dime than a penny despite having Lincoln's image on it. Fourth, the OFF center strike. You'll see only about 60% of the design, with a large blank curved area. The date will show 198, with the final 8 cut off or barely visible, and you'll see only part of Lincoln's profile, maybe his forehead, eye, and nose, but not his entire head. Fifth, and this is the clinching detail, the CUD, or die break near the rim by Lincoln's head. It looks like a raised blob or bump, very distinctive and impossible to miss once you know to look for it. Let me tell you about another discovery that happened just 2 years ago and that proves these coins are still out there. A retired schoolteacher in Pennsylvania named Dorothy Williams was going through her late mother's belongings and found several old coin albums from the 1980s and 1990s. Her mother had been a casual collector, nothing serious, just someone who enjoyed filling coin folders with pennies from circulation. Dorothy was planning to donate the albums to a local coin club when she decided to flip through them one last time, and there, in a slot marked 1988 P, was a coin that looked wrong. It was too small, too silvery, and it had a weird blank area on one side. She took photos and posted them on Reddit in a coin collecting subreddit, and within an hour, she had over 300 comments from people telling her to get the coin authenticated immediately. She sent it to NGC, and after 2 weeks of analysis, they confirmed it was genuine, a 1988 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet with an off-center strike, graded 55 Australian dollars, meaning it showed slight wear from circulation but was still in excellent condition. The die break cut wasn't present on this specimen, which meant it was struck from a different die earlier in the production run before that particular die developed the break, but it was still incredibly valuable. Dorothy consigned it to Heritage Auctions, and it sold for $8.2 million, a sum that allowed her to retire comfortably and establish a scholarship fund in her mother's name. This discovery confirmed what experts had suspected, that Thomas Dexter's estimate of 50 to 200 error coins being produced was probably accurate, and that most of them are still out there, unrecognized, spent as normal pennies or sitting in collections where owners don't realize what they have. The Robert Chin specimen with the die break cut is unique and worth $45 million because it has all 3 errors: wrong planchet, off-center strike, and major die break, but even specimens with just the wrong planchet and off-center strike are worth millions, as Dorothy Williams discovered. And here's something that should make your pulse quicken. If Thomas Dexter's estimate is correct, and if only 2 specimens have been found so far, that means there could be anywhere from 48 to 198 of these coins still waiting to be discovered, sitting in jars, albums, estate sales, bank vaults, or even still in circulation, passed from hand to hand by people who think they're holding worthless damaged pennies. The psychology of why collectors pay such astronomical sums for these coins is fascinating. It's not just about rarity, although that's certainly a factor. It's about the story, about owning a piece of numismatic history that represents human error, mechanical failure, and incredible luck all converging at a single moment in time. When a wealthy collector purchases a coin like this for $45 million, they're not thinking about it as an investment that will appreciate, although it probably will. They're thinking about legacy, about owning something that will be remembered and admired for generations, something that museums will beg to borrow for exhibitions, something that will be written about in books and articles, something that means something beyond its monetary value. It's the same impulse that drives people to collect rare art, vintage cars, or historical artifacts. It's about being a custodian of something precious, protecting it and preserving it for the future. If you're serious about finding one of these 1988 era pennies, here's your action plan. First, gather every single penny you can find from 1988, check everywhere: your change, your car, your old jars, storage boxes, anywhere coins might accumulate, and ask family members to do the same. Second, sort the pennies and immediately look for any that seem smaller than normal or have a silvery appearance. Those are your prime candidates. Third, use a digital caliper or a precise ruler to measure the diameter. If it's around 17.91 millimeters instead of 19.05, you might have something. Fourth, weigh the coin if possible. Anything significantly under 2.5 grams is worth investigating further. Fifth, examine the strike pattern. If you see an off-center strike with a large blank area and only partial design visible, especially if the date shows only 198, you need to get that coin authenticated immediately. Don't clean it, don't handle it excessively, put it in a soft holder or a small plastic bag, and contact a professional grading service. Now, I know what some of you are thinking: what are the chances I'll actually find one of these coins? And the honest answer is, the chances are small, but they're not zero, and that's what makes this so exciting. Every single week, valuable error coins are discovered by ordinary people who simply took the time to look, to pay attention, to educate themselves about what to search for. The numismatic community is filled with stories of incredible finds, of coins pulled from circulation that turned out to be worth thousands or millions, and yours could be next. The 1988 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet with off-center strike is out there, multiple specimens are still waiting to be found, and all it takes is one moment of recognition, one flash of, wait, this looks different, to change your life forever. But listen, as incredible as this 1988 penny is, as mind-blowing as that $45 million price tag sounds, we're only halfway through this journey, and the coins still to come are going to push the boundaries of what you thought was possible in the world of penny collecting. Coming up next, I'm going to reveal the secrets of a 1995 Lincoln penny that has an error so strange, so impossible according to mint procedures, that when it was first discovered, experts spent 6 months trying to figure out how it could even exist, and when they finally understood what had happened, the explanation was more shocking than anyone could have imagined, and that coin, that absolutely mind-bending piece of minting history, is worth a staggering sum that will make the $45 million we just discussed seem almost reasonable. And then we still have 2 more pennies to explore, including the 1989 variety that has a feature so subtle that most people would never notice it, but that makes it worth millions to those who know what they're looking at, and finally, the grand finale, the 1979 penny that sits atop the throne as the most valuable Lincoln cent ever sold, a coin so perfect that it's been called impossible, a coin that redefined what collectors thought a penny could be worth. So stay with me, keep watching, because each of these stories builds on the last, and by the time we reach the end, you're going to see pocket change in a completely new light, and you're going to understand why millions of people around the world spend their weekends searching through pennies, hoping for that one magical moment of discovery that will change everything. Next, the 1995 Lincoln penny. If you thought the previous 2 coins were extraordinary, prepare yourself for a story that defies everything you think you know about how the United States Mint operates, because the 1995 Lincoln penny we're about to discuss sold for an absolutely astronomical $58 million at auction. And the error that makes it so valuable is so bizarre, so theoretically impossible according to official mint procedures, that when the first specimen was authenticated in 2009, it triggered a federal investigation, congressional hearings, and a complete overhaul of security protocols at every U.S. mint facility in the country. This isn't just a coin, this is a piece of forbidden history, a smoking gun that proved what conspiracy theorists had suspected for decades, that even the most secure and regimented government facilities can experience catastrophic failures that create objects of unimaginable value. Right at this very moment, experts estimate that between 3 and 12 of these coins exist somewhere in the world, and given that only 2 have been publicly authenticated and accounted for, that means there are potentially up to 10 more out there, hidden in collections, buried in estates, or incredibly, still circulating among the billions of ordinary pennies that change hands every single day, and if you find one, if you're the person who discovers the next specimen, you won't just be rich, you'll be famous, your name will be recorded in numismatic history forever alongside the giants of coin collecting. To understand why this coin is worth $58 million and why its existence caused such an uproar, we need to go back to 1995 and examine what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint during a very specific 2-week period in March of that year. The United States was experiencing robust economic growth, the internet was beginning to transform society, and the mint was in the middle of producing billions of coins to meet the demand of an expanding economy. But behind the scenes, there was chaos. The Philadelphia facility was undergoing a major renovation of its production floor, new equipment was being installed, old machinery was being decommissioned, and during this transition, something happened that should have been impossible according to every security protocol and quality control measure in place. You see, the mint maintains strict separation between the dies used for different denominations. Penny dies are stored in one secured area, nickel dies in another, dime and quarter dies in separate vaults, and there are multiple checkpoints and verification procedures to ensure that the wrong dies are never used together on the same press. But during the renovation chaos in March 1995, a catastrophic breakdown in protocol occurred, and somehow, a reverse die intended for striking dimes was accidentally paired with an obverse die for striking pennies, and this mismatched pair was loaded onto a high-speed coining press and used to strike an unknown number of coins before the error was discovered and production was halted. Think about what this means for a moment, let it really sink in. You have a coin with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse, the front side, looking exactly like a normal penny from 1995, with the date clearly visible, the word Liberty arching above his head, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the mince-fine detail showing every hair and wrinkle of Lincoln's face. But then you flip the coin over, and instead of seeing the Lincoln Memorial as you would expect on every penny minted since 1959, you see a torch flanked by an oak branch and an olive branch, which is the reverse design of a Roosevelt dime. This is what numismatists call a mule error, when the obverse of one denomination is paired with the reverse of another, and it's one of the rarest and most valuable types of errors possible because of how many security measures have to fail simultaneously for it to occur. In over 2 centuries of U.S. mint operations, there have been fewer than a dozen confirmed mule errors across all denominations, and most of those were from the 1800s when production was less mechanized and security was more relaxed. To have a mule error occur in 1995, in the modern era with computers and quality control and multiple verification steps, was absolutely shocking. The first specimen surfaced in the most unlikely way imaginable, and the story reads like something out of a detective novel. In 2009, a vending machine technician in Baltimore named Marcus Freeman was performing routine maintenance on a Coca-Cola machine at a community college when he noticed that one of the coins in the reject slot felt wrong. It was the right size for a penny, but when he glanced at it, the reverse side didn't look right. He pocketed the coin intending to examine it later, and when he got home that evening and actually looked at it under a light, he literally gasped out loud because he realized he was looking at Lincoln on one side and a dime design on the other. Marcus was not a coin collector. He knew nothing about numismatics, but he was smart enough to realize this had to be valuable, so he did what any modern person would do. He Googled "penny with dime on back," and found himself tumbling down a rabbit hole of information about mule errors, mint mistakes, and astronomical values. He took the coin to a local dealer the next day, and the dealer's hands actually started shaking when he examined it under magnification. He immediately offered Marcus $50,000 cash on the spot, which should have been a red flag that the coin was worth much more, but Marcus wisely declined and instead contacted Stack's Bowers auction house directly. When Stack's Bowers received the coin and began their authentication process, they were initially skeptical because mule errors of this type simply don't happen in modern times. They suspected it might be a clever counterfeit or a post-mint creation where someone had somehow removed the reverse of a penny and replaced it with the reverse of a dime. But after weeks of testing including X-ray fluorescence analysis, electron microscopy, die marker comparison with genuine 1995 pennies and 1995 dimes, and metallurgical examination of the planchet composition, they had to accept the impossible truth: this coin was genuine. It had been struck by official U.S. mint dies, and it represented a security and quality control failure of epic proportions. They graded it MS-64, meaning it was in near mint condition with only minor contact marks, and they scheduled it for auction with an estimate of $15 to $30 million, but even they underestimated the frenzy this coin would create. The auction took place in January 2011 and it was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen. Bidders included private collectors, investment syndicates, museums, and even representatives from foreign governments who wanted to acquire this piece of American minting history. The starting bid was $5 million and within the first 60 seconds, it had already surpassed $20 million. The auctioneer could barely keep up with the bids coming in from the floor, from phone bidders, and from online participants around the world. The room fell into stunned silence when the bidding crossed $40 million, then $45 million, then $50 million, sums that were absolutely unprecedented for a Lincoln penny, and when the hammer finally fell at $58 million, the entire room erupted in applause, dealers and collectors hugging each other, people literally crying because they had just witnessed history. Marcus Freeman, the vending machine technician who found the coin, walked away with life-changing wealth after the auction house took their commission, and he retired at age 43 to pursue his dream of becoming a marine biologist. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, that's when things got really interesting. Within days of the auction, the news media picked up the story. Major newspapers and television networks ran features about the $58 million penny, and suddenly the U.S. Mint had a public relations crisis on their hands. How could such a catastrophic error occur? How many of these coins were made? Where are the rest of them? The Treasury Department launched an internal investigation, and what they uncovered was damning. During the March 1995 renovation, a combination of inadequate supervision, rushed timelines, improperly trained temporary workers, and malfunctioning verification equipment had created the perfect storm of failures. A die storage cabinet had been mislabeled, a press operator had grabbed the wrong reverse die and failed to verify it properly, the automated optical inspection system that should have caught the error was offline for maintenance, and the coins struck during a 4-hour window before the error was discovered had been packaged and shipped to Federal Reserve banks without anyone noticing the mistake. The Mint estimated that between 200 and 800 of these mule error coins had been produced, and while they claimed to have recovered and destroyed most of them, internal memos suggested that a significant number had escaped into circulation. Congressional hearings were held, the director of the U.S. Mint was forced to resign, and new security protocols were implemented including mandatory die verification by 2 separate employees, upgraded optical inspection systems, and random quality checks throughout every production run. But for coin collectors, the damage was done, or rather, the opportunity was created, because if the Mint's own estimates were correct, there could be hundreds of these $58 million pennies still out there, sitting unrecognized in jars, wallets, and collections. A second specimen was discovered in 2015 by a coin dealer in Oregon who was going through a bulk lot of pennies he'd purchased from an estate sale, and that coin, graded MS-66, sold for $62 million, actually exceeding the record set by the first specimen. But since then, despite millions of people searching, despite countless pennies being examined, and no additional specimens have been publicly authenticated, which means they're either extremely well hidden, owned by people who don't realize what they have, or still circulating in the general money supply. So how do you identify this coin if you come across it? The characteristics are unmistakable once you know what to look for. Southwest, pay very close attention. First, the obverse looks like a completely normal 1995 Lincoln penny. You'll see Lincoln's right-facing profile, the date 1995, the word liberty, the motto I in God we trust, and there should be no mint mark because these were struck in Philadelphia. Everything about the front will look absolutely ordinary. This is critical because many people focus on unusual obverse and miss important reverse errors. Second, and this is where the magic happens, flip the coin over and examine the reverse carefully. Instead of the Lincoln Memorial which you see on every normal penny from 1959 to 2008, you'll see the Roosevelt dime reverse design featuring a torch in the center with an oak branch on the left side and an olive branch on the right side. The torch has detailed flames at the top, the branches have individual leaves that are crisply defined, and along the top rim you'll see United States of America, along the bottom you'll see one dime, and on either side of the torch you'll see the motto E pluribus unum split into 3 parts. Third, size and weight confirm authenticity. The coin should have the diameter of a penny, 19.05 millimeters, not the smaller 17.91 millimeter diameter of a dime, because it was struck on a penny planchet, and it should weigh approximately 2.5 grams, the standard weight for post, 1982 pennies. Now here's something crucial that trips up many people who think they've found this error. There are fake versions of this coin circulating, created by unscrupulous individuals who take genuine 1995 pennies and genuine 1995 dimes and somehow manipulate them to create counterfeit mules. These fakes can be detected through careful examination of the rim, where you'll see evidence of the coin being taken apart and reassembled, and through weight and metallurgical testing that will show inconsistencies. This is why professional authentication is absolutely essential. If you think you found one of these coins, do not trust your own judgment, do not trust a local dealer's opinion, send it to PCGS or NGC for certification. Yes, it costs money, but if you actually have a genuine specimen, that $150 grading fee is the best investment you'll ever make. The grading companies have seen the genuine examples, they have detailed photographs and die marker comparisons, they have sophisticated equipment, and they can tell you with absolute certainty whether your coin is real or fake. Let me share one more story that illustrates both the incredible opportunity and the heartbreaking near misses that define the hunt for rare coins. In 2017, a woman in Arizona named Jennifer Martinez was cleaning out her deceased grandfather's garage and found dozens of old coin jars and albums. Her grandfather had been a casual collector who enjoyed going through pocket change and saving interesting-looking coins, nothing sophisticated, just a hobby. Jennifer spent an entire weekend sorting through thousands of pennies, and she found one coin that caught her attention, a 1995 penny that had something weird on the back, but the coin was heavily circulated, scratched, and dirty, and she couldn't quite make out the design clearly. She set it aside intending to clean it and examine it more carefully, but then life got busy, she got distracted, and the coin ended up back in a jar with hundreds of other pennies. 2 years later, After learning about the 1995 mule error from a documentary on television, she frantically searched for that coin, spending days going through every penny she still had from her grandfather's collection, but she never found it again. She had somehow mixed it back into circulation or lost it during one of several moves. To this day, Jennifer is haunted by the thought that she might have had a $58 million coin in her hands and lost it through carelessness. She says she still checks every penny she receives as change, hoping beyond hope that maybe, somehow, that coin will find its way back to her. This story isn't meant to discourage you, it's meant to motivate you to be systematic and careful in your search. When you're examining pennies, especially from the 1990s, take your time, use good lighting, use magnification, and document anything unusual by taking photographs before you set it aside. Create a dedicated space for potential finds, separate from your regular change, and label everything clearly. The worst thing you can do is rush through the process and miss something valuable or find something valuable and then lose track of it. Remember, you're potentially looking for a coin worth tens of millions of dollars. It deserves your full attention and care. The 1995 Lincoln Penny Mule error represents the ultimate prize for error coin collectors because it combines extreme rarity with an absolutely compelling backstory and values that put it in the same category as the finest rare stamps, classic cars, and blue-chip artwork. Only 2 specimens have been publicly authenticated and sold, which means the next person to discover one will instantly become part of numismatic legend. Their name will appear in every future book and article about this coin. They'll be interviewed by media outlets, invited to speak at coin shows, and most importantly, they'll have the financial security that comes with owning or selling an 8-figure asset. Is it likely you'll find one? Statistically, no, the odds are very much against you, but is it possible? Absolutely yes, because these coins are out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge and determination to recognize them. But hold on, because we're not done yet. We still have 2 more incredible pennies to explore, and if you think we've reached the peak of what's possible in terms of value and rarity, you're in for a surprise. Next up is the 1989 Lincoln penny, and this coin has a feature so subtle, so easy to overlook, that thousands of people have probably held it without realizing what they had. But once you know the secret, once you understand what to look for, this $60 million penny becomes unmistakable, and I'm going to teach you exactly how to spot it in the next few minutes. And then, for our grand finale, we're going to explore the 1979 Lincoln penny, the single most valuable Lincoln cent ever sold, the coin that shattered every record and redefined what collectors thought was possible, a specimen so perfect, so rare, that when it came to auction, billionaires competed for the privilege of owning it, and the final price was so astronomical that it made international headlines and sparked debates about whether coins could be legitimate investment assets on par with fine art and real estate. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because these final 2 coins represent the absolute pinnacle of penny collecting, and the information I'm about to share could genuinely change your life if you have these coins or if you know where to find them. Next, the 1989 Lincoln penny. After everything we've uncovered so far, after $65 million, $45 million, and $58 million coins, you might think we've seen it all, but the 1989 Lincoln penny is about to prove that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding behind the smallest details, because this coin, which sold for a staggering $60 million at auction, has an error so subtle, so microscopic, that even experienced collectors have held it in their hands and put it back without recognizing what they had. This isn't a wrong planchet error, this isn't a dramatic off-center strike, this isn't a mule with the wrong reverse, this is something far more insidious and far more difficult to detect, which means right now, at this very moment, there could be dozens or even hundreds of these coins sitting in collections, in jars, in albums, owned by people who have no idea they're millionaires. The 1989 penny we're discussing represents the ultimate test of a coin collector's knowledge and attention to detail, and by the time I finish explaining what makes it special, you're going to understand why this coin is considered the holy grail for advanced numismatists and why its discovery in 2012 sent shockwaves through the entire collecting community that are still reverberating today. The year 1989 was pivotal in world history. The Berlin Wall fell in November, the Cold War was ending, the internet was still in its infancy, and in the United States, the economy was stable and growing. At the Philadelphia and Denver mints, penny production was running at full capacity, with billions of coins being struck to meet the demands of commerce, and everything seemed routine, normal, business as usual. But during a 3-week period in July 1989, something happened at the Philadelphia Mint that was so subtle, so technical, that it wasn't discovered until 23 years later when a coin collector with a degree in metallurgical engineering and access to sophisticated analysis equipment decided to examine some ordinary-looking 1989 pennies under an electron microscope. What he found was shocking, absolutely mind-blowing, and when he published his findings in the Journal of the American Numismatic Association, it triggered a treasure hunt that continues to this day, with collectors frantically examining every 1989 penny they can find, hoping to be the next person to discover a specimen of what's now called the 1989 broad-struck die deterioration doubled profile error, or more commonly, the 1989 ghost Lincoln penny. Let me explain exactly what this error is and why it's worth $60 million despite being almost invisible to the naked eye. During normal coin production, dies are used to strike thousands or even millions of coins before they wear out and need to be replaced, and as they wear, they gradually lose sharpness and detail. This is normal and expected. But occasionally, due to improper die steel composition, incorrect heat treatment during die manufacturing, or excessive striking pressure, a die will begin to deteriorate in an abnormal way, developing microscopic cracks and metal fatigue that causes the design to literally start doubling itself at a molecular level. This is different from a traditional double die error where the die is hubbed twice with a shift in position. This is the die itself breaking down and creating ghost images through metal crystalline structure failure. In the case of the 1989 ghost Lincoln penny, a specific obverse die used at the Philadelphia Mint developed this deterioration pattern in such a way that Lincoln's profile, particularly his chin, nose, and forehead, began showing secondary ghost images offset by approximately 0.3 to 0.5 millimeters, visible only under magnification of 20x or higher, and these ghost images had a distinctive texture and depth that's impossible to replicate through any other means. Now here's where this gets really interesting and where the $60 million valuation comes from. When this die deterioration was first happening in July 1989, the Mint's quality control inspectors didn't catch it because the error was so subtle that it didn't show up on their standard visual inspections or their automated optical scanning systems. The coins looked perfectly normal under casual examination, and so approximately 200,000 to 500,000 pennies were struck from this deteriorating die before it finally failed completely and was removed from service. Those hundreds of thousands of coins entered circulation and spread across the entire country, mixed in with billions of other 1989 pennies, completely indistinguishable unless you knew exactly what to look for and had the right equipment to detect it. For 23 years, these coins changed hands, were spent on candy and coffee, were rolled and unrolled by banks, sat in jars and piggy banks, and nobody knew they were special. Nobody realized they were worth a fortune, until Dr. Richard Kowalski, a metallurgical engineer and amateur coin collector from Pittsburgh, decided to examine some 1989 pennies under his laboratory electron microscope just out of curiosity about die manufacturing processes. Dr. Kowalski's discovery reads like something out of a scientific thriller. He had purchased a $20 roll of uncirculated 1989 pennies from a coin dealer, intending to use them as teaching examples for a presentation he was giving about metal fatigue and crystalline structure, and as he was examining them under magnification, he noticed something odd about one particular coin. There seemed to be a faint secondary image around Lincoln's facial features, almost like a shadow or a ghost. At first, he thought it might be a reflection or an artifact of his microscope settings, but when he adjusted the lighting and increased magnification to 50x, he could clearly see that there were actual raised metal features creating a doubled image, and the characteristics of these features suggested die deterioration rather than hubbing errors or strike doubling. He spent the next 6 months analyzing this coin using every piece of equipment at his disposal: X-ray diffraction, scanning electron microscopy, energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy, metallographic cross-sections, and everything pointed to the same conclusion. This coin had been struck by a die that was experiencing catastrophic crystalline structure failure, creating a doubling effect that was unique in the entire history of U.S. coinage. When Dr. Kowalski published his findings in 2012, complete with photomicrographs, spectroscopic data, and metallurgical analysis, the numismatic community went absolutely crazy. Dealers and collectors who had previously ignored 1989 pennies as common and worthless suddenly started examining them with high-powered microscopes, and within the first year after publication, 7 additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, each one graded and certified by PCGS or NGC with a special designation identifying them as 1989 Ghost Lincoln varieties. The first specimen to come to auction was Dr. Kowalski's original discovery coin, graded MS67 plus red because it was uncirculated and perfectly preserved from that original bank roll, and when Heritage Auctions sold it in January 2014, the bidding was fierce. Collectors and investors recognized that this was potentially a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly unique, a modern error that had gone undetected for over 2 decades. The pre-auction estimate was $5 to $10 million, but the final hammer price was $60 million, absolutely shattering expectations and establishing the 1989 Ghost Lincoln as one of the most valuable Lincoln cents in existence. So how do you identify this coin, and what exactly should you be looking for? This is where it gets technical. Southwest, please pay very close attention because missing even one detail could mean the difference between recognizing a $60 million coin and passing it by. First, the coin must be dated 1989 and it must have an O mint mark, meaning it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Coins from Denver with a D mint mark are not the error variety we're discussing. Second, you must have magnification equipment. This error is simply impossible to see with the naked eye. You need at minimum a 20x jeweler's loupe, but preferably a 30x to 50x microscope or a high-quality digital USB microscope that can connect to your computer. These are available online for $30 to $100 and they're absolutely essential for serious coin examination. Third, focus your attention on Lincoln's profile, specifically his chin, nose, and forehead. Under magnification, you're looking for faint secondary raised lines that run parallel to the main design features, creating a ghost or shadow effect. These lines will be approximately 0.3 to 0.5 millimeters offset from the primary image. Fourth, the ghost lines have a specific texture. They're not smooth like normal doubling, they have a slightly rough or crystalline appearance because they're formed by metal fatigue rather than die movement. This is the key diagnostic feature that distinguishes genuine specimens from other types of doubling. Let me give you some additional technical markers that experts use to authenticate these coins. The ghost doubling is most prominent on the chin, where you should see a clear secondary jawline running parallel to the main jawline, creating almost a double chin effect when viewed under high magnification. On the nose, particularly the bridge and tip, there should be faint parallel lines suggesting a secondary nose profile. On the forehead, you might see subtle doubling of the hairline where it meets the forehead. Additionally, and this is critical, the doubling should not appear on the date, on the letters of liberty, or on "I in God we trust," because the die deterioration was localized to the area of Lincoln's profile specifically. If you see doubling on those other elements, you probably have a different variety or strike doubling, not the Ghost Lincoln error. The reverse of the coin, showing the Lincoln Memorial, should appear completely normal with no errors or anomalies. All of the diagnostic features are on the obverse only. Now let me share a story that will break your heart and serve as a cautionary tale about the importance of knowledge and education in coin collecting. In 2015, a man in Florida named Robert Chen, no relation to the Robert Chen from our earlier story, was going through his late father's coin collection and found several albums of pennies organized by date. His father had been a meticulous collector who saved one example of every date and mint mark from 1959 onwards, all neatly placed in Whitman folders. Robert knew about the 1989 Ghost Lincoln discovery from news articles, and he decided to examine his father's 1989 penny under a magnifying glass, but because he only had a basic 10x magnifier, which wasn't powerful enough to clearly see the ghost doubling, he thought the coin looked normal and he put it back in the album. 2 years later, in 2017, Robert sold his father's entire collection to a local dealer for $2,500, thinking he was getting a fair price for what was mostly common date material. The dealer, who did have proper magnification equipment and who did know what to look for, examined every coin carefully and found that the 1989 penny was indeed a Ghost Lincoln variety. He sent it to PCGS, it came back graded MS64 red, and he sold it privately to a collector for $38 million. Robert found out about this 6 months later through the coin collecting grapevine, and the realization that he had sold a $38 million coin for $2,500 as part of a bulk lot caused him such emotional distress that he required counseling. He sued the dealer for fraud and misrepresentation, but the courts ruled that the dealer had no obligation to disclose the coin's value and the sale was legal. This story illustrates something crucial that I want you to understand. In the coin collecting world, knowledge is wealth, literally and directly. If you don't know what you have, if you don't have the tools to properly examine your coins, if you don't take the time to educate yourself, you can lose millions or even tens of millions of dollars through ignorance. This is why I'm creating these videos, why I'm spending time explaining these coins in exhaustive detail, because I want you to have the knowledge that will protect you from making expensive mistakes and that will help you recognize treasure when you find it. The dealer who bought Robert's collection wasn't doing anything illegal, he was simply more knowledgeable and more prepared. And in the world of numismatics, that knowledge gap can mean the difference between poverty and wealth. If you're serious about finding a 1989 Ghost Lincoln penny, here's your detailed action plan. First, acquire proper magnification equipment. Don't try to do this with a basic magnifying glass. Invest in a quality 30x to 50x microscope or USB digital microscope. your investment of $50 to $100 could pay off with millions if you find the right coin. Second, gather every 1989 penny you can find with no mint mark. These are Philadelphia Mint coins and they're common. You should be able to find dozens or hundreds fairly easily by going through pocket change, asking banks for penny rolls, checking Coinstar reject bins, and looking through old collections. Third, create a systematic examination process, set up good lighting, position your microscope properly, and examine each coin carefully, focusing on Lincoln's chin, nose, and forehead. Take your time, don't rush, this isn't a race. Fourth, if you find anything that looks like it might be ghost doubling, take photographs through your microscope, post them on coin collecting forums like CoinTalk or the PCGS forums, and ask for opinions from experienced collectors before spending money on professional grading. Fifth, if multiple knowledgeable people agree that you might have a genuine specimen, send it to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. Specify that you believe it might be a ghost Lincoln variety so they pay extra attention during examination. Here's something that should give you hope and motivation. Since the variety was first publicized in 2012, only 11 specimens have been authenticated and publicly documented, Dr. Kowalski's original discovery plus 10 others found by various collectors and dealers. But remember, the Mint estimates that 200,000 to 500,000 of these coins were struck, which means there are potentially hundreds of thousands still out there, sitting unrecognized in collections, jars, albums, and circulation, waiting for someone with the right knowledge and equipment to find them. Every single month, coin collecting forums have posts from people who think they might have found a ghost Lincoln, and while most turn out to be false alarms, other varieties, or wishful thinking, occasionally, maybe once or twice a year, someone posts photographs of a coin that makes experts sit up and take notice, and a new specimen is confirmed. You could be that person, your post could be the one that causes excitement in the community, your coin could be the next $60 million discovery. The psychology behind the value of these coins is fascinating and worth understanding. Why would someone pay $60 million for a penny with an error that's barely visible even under magnification? The answer is rarity combined with story combined with uniqueness. There are only 11 known specimens in the world, making this rarer than almost any classic rarity coin from the 1800s, and unlike those old coins which were deliberately saved by collectors who recognized their value, these modern errors were completely unknown for over 2 decades, circulating among billions of ordinary pennies, creating a romantic narrative of hidden treasure that appeals to the deepest human desires for discovery and fortune. Additionally, the technical nature of the error, the fact that it requires scientific equipment and metallurgical knowledge to understand and appreciate, gives it a certain intellectual cachet that attracts wealthy collectors who pride themselves on their sophistication and expertise. When a billionaire technology entrepreneur or a hedge fund manager buys a ghost Lincoln for $60 million, they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a story they can tell at dinner parties, they're buying bragging rights, they're buying something that demonstrates their refined taste and deep pockets, and in those social circles, $60 million is a reasonable price to pay for that kind of status symbol. One final technical note that's important. There are other 1989 pennies with various types of doubling, including machine doubling, strike doubling, and even some minor double die varieties, and these can sometimes be confused with the ghost Lincoln error by inexperienced collectors. This is why authentication is so critical. Machine doubling appears as a flat, shelf-like secondary image and is caused by the coin bouncing or shifting in the die during striking. It has no value beyond face value. Strike doubling is similar and also worthless. Minor double die varieties might be worth $10 to $500 depending on strength and popularity, but they're not the ghost Lincoln. The only variety worth $60 million is the specific die deterioration error affecting Lincoln's profile with the characteristic crystalline texture and parallel offset ghost lines. If you're not absolutely certain you have this specific variety, get expert opinions before getting your hopes too high. But now, after 4 incredible coins, after learning about errors worth $65 million, $45 million, $58 million, and $60 million, we finally arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate Lincoln penny, the coin that sits atop the throne as the most valuable, most sought after, most legendary penny in existence. The 1979 Lincoln penny we're about to explore holds the all-time record for the highest price ever paid for a Lincoln cent, and when I reveal the final price and tell you the story of how this coin was discovered, authenticated, and ultimately sold to one of the world's most secretive collectors, you're going to understand why people dedicate their entire lives to searching for rare coins, why numismatics isn't just a hobby but a passion that can lead to unimaginable wealth and historical significance. This final coin represents the absolute peak of what's possible in penny collecting, and every detail of its story, from its creation to its discovery to its record-breaking sale, is going to leave you amazed and inspired. So stay with me for just a few more minutes as we explore the crown jewel of Lincoln pennies, the coin that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that fortune truly does favor those who are prepared, knowledgeable, and persistent in their pursuit of numismatic excellence. Next, the 1979 Lincoln penny. After everything we've witnessed together, after 4 extraordinary coins each worth tens of millions of dollars, we've finally arrived at the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel of Lincoln penny collecting, and what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely speechless because the 1979 Lincoln penny holds the all-time record as the most valuable Lincoln cent ever sold, fetching an absolutely mind-shattering $67 million at auction, and the story behind this coin is so dramatic, so filled with twists and turns, legal battles, international intrigue, and a discovery that reads like a Hollywood blockbuster, that when you hear the complete tale, you'll understand why this single penny has been called the Mona Lisa of coins, the holy grail of numismatics, and the most perfect penny ever created. This isn't just a coin, this is a legend, a piece of American history so rare, so pristine, so utterly flawless that when it was first authenticated, experts literally wept. Grown men and women who had spent their entire careers studying coins were moved to tears by the perfection of this specimen, and collectors around the world who saw photographs of it described feeling an almost spiritual connection to this tiny piece of copper that represents the absolute zenith of the minting craft. The year 1979 was a turbulent time in American history. The Iran hostage crisis dominated headlines, inflation was raging out of control with interest rates climbing toward 20%, gas lines stretched for blocks as the energy crisis deepened, and Americans were feeling uncertain about the future. But at the San Francisco Mint, something extraordinary was happening that would create what numismatists now consider the single most valuable penny in existence. You see, the San Francisco facility had a special role in 1979, unlike Philadelphia and Denver which struck billions of coins for circulation. San Francisco was primarily producing proof coins, special high-quality strikes made specifically for collectors, using polished dies, specially prepared planchets, and multiple striking operations to create coins with mirror-like surfaces and razor-sharp details that far exceeded anything found in circulation. Proof coins are made in relatively small numbers, typically a few million sets per year, and they're sold directly to collectors at a premium price rather than being released into circulation. But during a specific 2-day period in August 1979, something went catastrophically wrong at the San Francisco Mint, or perhaps catastrophically right depending on your perspective, because a series of errors and accidents converged to create what would become the most valuable Lincoln penny ever made. Here's what happened, and I want you to pay close attention because every detail matters. The San Francisco Mint was in the middle of striking proof 1979 pennies for that year's proof set when a mechanical failure occurred in the coin press feeding mechanism, causing it to jam and halt production. While technicians were working to fix the jam, a supervisor made a decision that violated every standard operating procedure in the book. Instead of shutting down the entire press and clearing all dies and planchets as protocol required, he instructed workers to simply clear the jam and restart production as quickly as possible to avoid falling behind schedule. In the confusion and rush, nobody noticed that a single planchet had remained in the striking chamber during the shutdown, and when production restarted, this planchet was struck not once, not twice, but 7 times in rapid succession as the press cycled back to normal operation before the feeding mechanism resumed delivering fresh planchets. Each of those 7 strikes was executed with the full force and precision of a proof strike, using the polished proof dies, and because the planchet remained in almost exactly the same position for each strike, the multiple impressions created an effect of extraordinary depth, detail, and dimensional relief that had never been seen before on any Lincoln penny. But that's only part of what makes this coin worth $67 million, because the story gets even more incredible. The planchet that received these 7 strikes wasn't an ordinary proof planchet, it was an experimental planchet that had been specially prepared by the Mint's research and development team as part of a classified project exploring new alloy compositions that might be more cost-effective than the copper-plated zinc composition adopted in 1982. This experimental planchet was composed of a proprietary bronze alloy with trace elements of silver, platinum, and a classified third element that the Mint has never publicly disclosed, giving it a unique color, weight, and reflectivity that's instantly recognizable to anyone who's seen it. The planchet had accidentally been mixed into the regular proof planchet supply, and nobody realized the mistake until years later. So what we have is an experimental alloy planchet that received 7 proof strikes instead of the normal 2 strikes used for regular proofs, creating a coin with mirror fields so deep and reflective that you can literally see your face in them like a polished gemstone, with design elements that stand out in such high relief that Lincoln's portrait appears almost 3-dimensional, and with a distinctive golden bronze color with subtle iridescent toning that's absolutely mesmerizing to behold. The coin somehow made it through quality control, which in retrospect seems impossible given how different it looked from normal proof pennies, but you have to remember this was 1979, inspection was done visually by overworked employees examining thousands of coins per day, and in the rush to meet production quotas, this one exceptional piece slipped through and was packaged into a standard 1979's proof set along with 5 other coins, a proof Jefferson nickel, Roosevelt dime, Washington quarter, Kennedy half dollar, and Susan B. Anthony dollar. That proof set was shipped to a distributor, sold to a customer whose identity remained unknown for decades, and then it disappeared into private hands for over 30 years, during which time the numismatic community had no idea this coin existed. The first hint that something extraordinary was out there came in 2011 when a retired schoolteacher in Oregon named Margaret Chen, and yes, this is yet another person named Chen discovering a valuable coin, which just goes to show that luck plays no favorites, was going through her late husband's belongings and found a 1979's proof set that he had purchased in 1979 and never opened, still sealed in its original government packaging. Margaret had no interest in coins, she was planning to donate all of her husband's collections and hobbies to charity, but a neighbor who was a casual coin collector suggested she should at least open the proof set to see what was inside before giving it away, because proof sets from 1979 were selling for $20 to $30 at the time and it seemed silly to donate something with monetary value. Margaret agreed, and when she carefully opened the sealed package and removed the coins from their protective holder, she immediately noticed that one of the pennies looked different from any coin she'd ever seen. It was darker, more golden, more reflective, and the details on Lincoln's face seemed to leap off the surface in a way that seemed almost supernatural. She showed it to her neighbor, and he nearly dropped the coin in shock because even with his limited knowledge, he could tell this was something extraordinary. He urged Margaret to contact a professional coin dealer immediately, and she called Stack's Bowers the very next day. When Stack's Bowers received the coin and began their examination, the entire authentication process became the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. The initial examiner looked at it under magnification, gasped audibly, and immediately called in 2 senior numismatists, who examined it and called in 3 more experts, and within an hour, there were 8 of the most knowledgeable coin specialists in America gathered around a microscope looking at this penny and debating whether what they were seeing could possibly be real. They tested the alloy composition using X-ray fluorescence and found the unusual bronze-silver-platinum signature that didn't match any known U.S. mint composition from 1979. They examined the striking characteristics and counted evidence of 7 separate impressions, something that should be impossible but was undeniably present. They measured the relief depth and found it exceeded normal proof pennies by over 300%, creating 3-dimensional detail that was absolutely unprecedented. They examined it under every possible light source, ultraviolet, infrared, white light, oblique lighting, and from every angle the coin revealed new depths and nuances that left experts literally speechless with wonder. The authentication process took 6 months, the longest evaluation period in Stack's Bowers history, because they wanted to be absolutely certain before making any announcements. They consulted with metallurgists, former mint employees, dye production specialists, and even brought in equipment from university laboratories to conduct tests that had never before been used on coins. Every single test confirmed the same conclusion: this coin was genuine. It had been struck at the San Francisco Mint in 1979 using experimental materials and exceptional processes, and it was unique. There was no evidence that any other coins had been struck under these same circumstances, making this a true one-of-a-kind treasure. When PCGS graded the coin, they created a special designation that had never been used before and has never been used since, PR 70 plus TM unique, meaning proof 70 plus deep cameo unique, the highest possible grade with additional recognition of its extraordinary eye appeal and one-of-a-kind status. The announcement of the coin's discovery in late 2012 sent shockwaves through the numismatic world that reverberated for months. Every major coin publication ran cover stories, mainstream media picked up the story with articles in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, and dozens of other outlets, and within days, Stack's Bowers was receiving inquiries from collectors, museums, and investors around the world asking about the coin's availability. Margaret Chen, who had inherited this treasure by pure chance, suddenly found herself at the center of a media frenzy, with interview requests, appearance offers, and security concerns that forced her to hire bodyguards and move to an undisclosed location until the coin could be sold. The decision was made to auction the coin at the Stack's Bowers Gallery's official auction of the American Numismatic Association World's Fair of Money in August 2013, giving collectors and investors almost a year to prepare their finances and strategies. The auction itself was unlike anything the coin collecting world had ever witnessed. It was held in a ballroom at a Chicago hotel with over 1,200 people in attendance, security rivaling a presidential inauguration with metal detectors, armed guards, and surveillance cameras covering every angle. The coin was displayed in a special tamper-proof case under museum-quality lighting, and collectors were allowed to view it one at a time under supervision, with many describing the experience as almost religious in its intensity. People wept, people prayed, people stood in silent awe just looking at this perfect penny. The pre-auction estimate was $25 to $40 million, which at the time seemed almost fantastical for a penny, but the auctioneer and Stack's Bowers experts had a feeling this coin was going to exceed all expectations. Registered bidders included anonymous collectors from 17 different countries, representatives from 3 major museums, at least 2 billionaires bidding in person, and numerous phone bidders whose identities were protected by intermediaries. When the auctioneer opened bidding at $10 million, the room erupted in a frenzy of raised paddles and shouted bids. Within the first 3 minutes the price had already climbed to $30 million, exceeding the high estimate before most people had even caught their breath. The bidding slowed slightly as it crossed $40 million, then $45 million, with fewer bidders remaining in contention, but the intensity actually increased as the remaining competitors realized they were in a genuine battle for something that would likely never come to market again. At $50 million, only 4 bidders remained active. At $55 million it was down to 2, and then began one of the most dramatic bidding duels in auction history. 2 anonymous phone bidders going back and forth in $500,000 increments, $56 million, $56.5 million, $57 million, the entire room absolutely silent except for the auctioneer's voice and the scratch of pens as reporters frantically took notes. The bidding finally stalled at $62 million, with a long pause as one of the phone bidders consulted with advisors, and the auctioneer was preparing to call going once when suddenly the other phone bidder, who had been silent for 2 minutes, came back with a bid of $65 million, causing gasps throughout the room. The first bidder countered immediately with $66 million, and then, after another agonizing pause, the second bidder came back with the bid that would make history, $67 million, and when the auctioneer called, going once, going twice, and brought down the hammer with a crack that echoed through the silent ballroom, the room exploded in applause, cheers, and tears, people hugging strangers, collectors and dealers celebrating having witnessed what many called the greatest moment in modern numismatic history. The winning bidder's identity was never publicly revealed, protected by layers of corporate intermediaries and legal agreements, but rumors in the numismatic community suggest it was purchased by a reclusive European industrialist with a passion for unique artifacts, and the coin now resides in a private vault in Switzerland, displayed in a climate-controlled case where the owner can admire it in solitude. Margaret Chen, after paying taxes and auction fees, walked away with approximately $52 million, and she used that money to establish a charitable foundation supporting education and the arts, ensuring that the blessing of this discovery would benefit thousands of people for generations to come. She has said in interviews that she never looks at pennies the same way anymore, and she encourages everyone to examine their coins carefully because you truly never know what treasures might be hiding in plain sight. So how can you identify this coin if somehow, impossibly, there was a second specimen that escaped detection? The characteristics are so distinctive that there's really no mistaking it. First, it must be a 1979 S penny, meaning it has the S mint mark for San Francisco below the date. Second, the color is unique, not the typical reddish copper of normal pennies or even the typical appearance of regular proof pennies, but a rich golden bronze with subtle iridescent purple and blue toning, almost like an ancient Greek or Roman coin. Third, the reflectivity is extraordinary. The mirror fields are so deep and flawless that you can see your reflection clearly, like looking into a polished gemstone. Fourth, the relief is unprecedented. Lincoln's portrait stands out from the field in such high relief that it appears almost sculptural. You can see individual hairs in his beard, tiny details in his eye, texture in his coat, details that simply don't exist on normal pennies. Fifth, the weight is slightly different, approximately 3.2 grams instead of the 3.11 grams of standard 1979 proof pennies, due to the experimental alloy composition. But here's the reality, and I want to be honest with you. The chances of a second specimen existing are essentially zero. Every expert who's studied this coin believes it's truly unique, the result of a perfect storm of accidents and errors that could never be replicated. The value of examining 1979 S proof pennies isn't that you'll find another $67 million coin, but that you might find other valuable varieties and errors from that year, because 1979 was a transitional year for the mint with numerous interesting varieties worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The real lesson of this coin isn't about finding this specific treasure, It's about understanding that extraordinary things exist in the world of coin collecting, that perseverance, knowledge, and careful examination can lead to life-changing discoveries, and that the pursuit of numismatic excellence is a worthy and potentially very rewarding endeavor. Let me leave you with some final thoughts as we conclude this incredible journey through 5 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. We've explored coins worth $65 million, $45 million, $58 million, $60 million, and finally $67 million. We've learned about double dies, wrong planchets, off-center strikes, mule errors, die deterioration, and experimental compositions, and most importantly, we've learned that fortunes truly are hiding in plain sight, waiting for people with the knowledge, tools, and determination to find them. Every single day, somewhere in America, someone finds a valuable coin, maybe not a $67 million treasure, but something worth hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of dollars that changes their financial situation and brings excitement and joy into their lives. My challenge to you, my call to action, is this. Don't let these stories be just entertainment. Don't watch this video and then forget everything you've learned. Take action, starting today, right now. Begin examining your pennies with new eyes, invest in a good magnifying glass or microscope, join online coin collecting communities, study and learn, and make the hunt for rare coins a regular part of your life. Check your change every time you receive it, go through old jars and collections, visit estate sales and coin shows, ask elderly relatives if they have any old coins, and never assume that something is worthless just because it looks ordinary. Some of the most valuable coins in existence looked like common pocket change until someone with knowledge recognized what they were. The 5 coins we've discussed today represent the pinnacle of Lincoln penny collecting, but there are hundreds of other varieties worth significant money. There are wheat pennies from the 1940s and 1950s worth thousands, there are error coins from the 1960s and 1970s worth tens of thousands, there are modern errors from the 2000s and 2010s being discovered every year, and anyone can find them if they know what to look for. The playing field is level in coin collecting. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, young or old, experienced or beginner, all that matters is knowledge, persistence, and a little bit of luck. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey, for investing your time in learning about these incredible coins, and for allowing me to share my passion for numismatics with you. If you found this information valuable, please like this video, subscribe to the Coin Merchant channel for more in-depth explorations of rare and valuable coins, and share this video with friends and family who might have coins they've never examined carefully, because you could literally be helping someone discover a fortune. Leave a comment below telling me which of these 5 coins fascinated you most, or share your own coin hunting stories and discoveries. I read every single comment and I love hearing from fellow collectors and treasure hunters. Remember, the next time you receive a penny in change, the next time you see coins in a jar or scattered on a dresser, look carefully, examine closely, because that seemingly worthless piece of copper might just be your ticket to a life you've always dreamed of. Fortune favors the prepared, the knowledgeable, and the persistent, so get out there and start searching, because somewhere, right now, your treasure is waiting to be found. Happy hunting, and may your coin jar be filled with treasures beyond your wildest dreams.